Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We are having a very, very historic, great informational show today. It's on Chicanos Por La Causa, Cplc. We are going to be talking about the history and the services that this organization provides. An amazing organization here in Phoenix, Arizona, and I understand that now you are also in Nevada and what other state? New Mexico?
New Mexico,
Nevada.
And doing some work in Mexico itself.
Oh, even in Mexico.
Yes.
So stay with us for the whole hour. We are going to devote a whole hour to talk about Chicanos Por La Causa. The history, it's amazing. I was just, I took some notes, as I typically do before coming to a show, and just mentioning names. I mean, just to mention the names, it's unbelievable. Names such as Alfredo Gutierrez, Gustavo Gutierrez, Pete Garcia, Joeri Lopez, Rosy Lopez, Danny Ortega, Gustavo, I think I mentioned him already, Pepe Martinez, Miguel Moncel, Lauro Gutierrez, Tommy Espinosa, Roberto Villaseñor, Juan Alvarez, whom we have here. He was the first CEO. Edmundo Hidalgo, David Adamen. I'm Terry Cruz, of course.
Yes.
Pete Garcia. This device is not doing justice here. But anyway, just to some of those names are very, very familiar to many Arizonans, particularly from the Phoenix area. And there's just so much history, so much service, so much struggle, so much lucha of folks who have given literally their lives for La Causa. And even this name, Chicanos Por La Causa, is loaded. It's loaded with history. So let me do a brief introduction, and then we're just going to start addressing the history because, I am not a native of Arizona. I grew up in Los Angeles, and I've been in Arizona for 15 years, but I consider Arizona now my home, and that's because I'm involved in the community. When you get involved, you kind of become part of the familia, that term that we used a lot here in this area. So I totally consider, at least feel, part of this familia here in Phoenix, and I've been doing shows on the history of Phoenix and with Frank Barrios and others, and it's just so much that we have here. And today we're going to be addressing some of that. Not in any order, but just to my left, I have Victor Contreras. Victor Contreras, you are with Cplc, and you are to blame for this show because I reached out to you and you helped me put it together.
Yeah.
Thank you and welcome to our show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. And then Juan Alvarez. Juan Alvarez, the first CEO back in 1969, David, I think.
69 when we formed the corporation, but before that.
Yeah, and you and I, Juan, were just briefly conversing before the show, and I really got touched by just seeing you and relating the history. Thank you so much for everything that you are and that you have done for Latinos, for Arizona, for Chicanos Por La Causa. Thank you so much, and welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. And really, the success of the organization is based upon the present leadership and more so the support of the community.
Definitely.
For that, we're very humble.
Yeah, well, amazing. And to my right, we have David Adamen, the current president and CEO. David, you're all over the place. You're hard to get. Victor was telling me, "Well, I'm working on it. We'll see." And now, actually, you came and you came from doing your exercises, or you're gonna go afterwards? But
have to do it afterwards.
Yeah,
and stay healthy.
Yeah. No, and I'm just thankful that Victor was able to. Coordinate the schedules for you to be here. And again, you are the current president and CEO of Chicanos Por La Causa, and you're all over the place. And I've seen that you are in some initiatives related to the country of Mexico, correct?
Yes. I've been CEO a little bit over 2 years now.
2 years.
It's a great honor, and I love talking to folks like Juan Alvarez, who were the folks that actually founded this organization.
Yeah.
So I like to pay a lot of respect to
Of course.
what we're working with.
Wow.
Obviously working on the shoulders of giants that have built this. I'm the 7th CEO in the history.
7th.
And we have a great growth plan. We're in the 3 states we mentioned earlier, but plans to be in additional 4 states. So California, Texas, Utah, and Colorado are kind of on the radar right now.
Wow.
But one of the things I also wanted to do was to work more with Mexico, right? As a neighbor, I work there doing work with the Arizona-Mexico Commission. Governor Ducey appointed me to that. So we're working with, for example, some fun things like the Olympic Committee of Mexico. We're working with the big national university, UNAM. We're working, trying to combat human trafficking with a group called Consejo Ciudadano, which is a national private group that tries to combat human trafficking. And I think it's important, right? There's 38 official count. There's probably more, but there's 38 million Mexican Americans now in the United States, and it's a big region area that I want to make sure that our new mission is to drive economic and political empowerment. So part of that is working on both sides of the border and working with folks. So different initiatives to help people become citizens and to vote in both countries, because the thing that Mexico allows people to maintain their citizenship. So we're creating super citizens, as we call it.
Of course. Now, I know that I'm not going to have enough background to perhaps ask you questions that would address certain elements of CPLC, so I'm going to ask you to stay very connected, everyone in the conversation, and anything that you feel needs to be mentioned that is not even within my radar, please, let's do justice to CPLC and let's not be limited to my knowledge. So please, this is a show that we will devote to CPLC, so please feel free to address anything that you feel needs to be addressed that I am not addressing or asking questions about. So just before we come to the history and with Juan, let's go backwards. So before you, we had Edmundo Hidalgo.
Edmundo Hidalgo. And then before that was Pete Garcia.
Pete Garcia, who passed away,
yeah,
right?
Unfortunately, and missed dearly.
Right.
To talk to him as well. I talked to all the past presidents for advice and direction. And before him, we had Arloton, who served for a very short time, about a year or so.
Okay.
Kind of joke about that, but he did serve as CEO, and we love him. And then before that, it was Tommy Espinosa. And then before him, it was Ronnie Lopez, which by the way, I wanted my heart and prayers still go out. Ronnie lost his son, Paul Lopez, who we consider him a family
Wow,
member.
that is right.
We lost him actually
We
earlier
heard
this
that.
week, so
Right.
very sad about that. And then the very first is Juan Alvarez.
And we have him.
Yes, and you
in the
have him.
studio.
And,
Juan, I don't know. There's so much. I'm literally going to open the mics for the three of you to talk to anybody who's joining by Facebook Live, anybody who's listening to the radio show. But the history of CPLC, where should we start?
I think we need to start in terms of what brought the organizing committee of CPLC into play, and that was a number of concerned community leaders that were very much involved in the community, but more so, there were a lot of folks who were part of the farm workers movement and who brought it in, who came as part of it. But then also there were union leaders within the organization that wanted to be part of that. And therefore, by the time the organizing committee came about, there were also other leaders. There were such as Laura Garcia from Guadalupe, that was a big contributor to the formation of the original Chicano Por La Causa.
Can you tell us a little bit about a little before the concept of forming Chicanos Por La Causa? What was going on with these folks, with the people that you just mentioned, even before the thought of forming Chicanos Por La Causa?
Well, the force was, at least as I saw it and continue reading history, there were obviously a lot of social problems throughout the Southwest and the U.S. And one of the things that was in their minds was that our students were not getting the opportunity to be educated. For example, at one point in time, they said that 40% of the Hispanic students in high school would drop out.
40%, that's high.
And therefore, no telling, very small amounts that go to the university. That's an example.
Right.
Having said that, San Antonio had the first walkout. Los Angeles had the first student walkout. San Francisco had the student walkout, and then Phoenix had that walkout.
So this is a form of protest so that what would happen?
What would happen was simply saying to powers to be, we want to be educated, we need support,
Okay.
and we want to be treated as equal as everybody else.
Right.
And usually folks who are from the inner city, if you please, or not getting as much support, finance, resources to support the students that are living in the inner city.
So education was a big element. It started, you said, in San Antonio, Texas.
Right.
And then there was also some walkouts here in Phoenix,
Yes,
correct?
right.
Around the same time?
Within 6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
The Phoenix Union, I understand?
Phoenix Union.
And South Mountain too?
Somewhat South Mountain.
So that whole idea was again to call the attention of the powers that be to start paying more attention to this group of folks.
That was one of the activities
Okay.
that helped Chicano Por La Causa bring the problem to the forefront and have a discussion with all the families who were involved and the community.
Now, the founders, the original group, were there young students, or some were going into the universities, or some were not? Is that what, like a mix?
It was a mix.
A mix.
It all came together as a mix. There were people there who already were finishing their degrees, and there were some who were going and some were planning to go. For example, I can remember Daniel Ortega, for example, was then, I believe he was first year at ASU. And other people like Sin Carbona had already finished, and other people who were planning to go. So it was a mix. But then more important, there were a lot of community leaders who were willing to say, we need to do this.
Right.
And whatever it takes.
Yeah. And I mean, history doesn't happen in silos, so whatever is happening in one place, it triggers the same kind of outreach, if you will, in other places. So now you reference Texas. Just from what I've been learning about history, Texas seemed to have been like an epicenter for many things, right?
That's correct, but then on the other hand, Los Angeles and California has its own dynamic,
Right.
and therefore Arizona was stuck in between. I mean, in history, if you look at the political structure, you look at the changes, you look at what has had an impact in Arizona outcome, you would measure. You have to look at both of the models.
Right.
We don't live in an island because there's a lot of pressures coming both ways. And California was also leading contender in that walkout.
Yeah. So basically, the issues were about the same. It was education, equality, eliminating segregation and all that.
Civil rights.
Civil rights.
Poor health care delivery.
Okay.
For example, the Hispanic community was never getting United Way funds. So we were asking why not.
Right.
And therefore, the spinoff was by the Sol.
And we're going to have to continue with that. We have to go on a short break right now. Stay with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection, addressing today CPLC, its history and services. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. Amazing show today, Chicanos Por La Causa, CPLC, its history and services. We will continue addressing the history, and then we will move to the services that this organization provides. And before we continue with Juan, I wanted to bring David Adame, current president and CEO. you were telling me off the air that you did participate in the walkouts of Phoenix Union. Can you help us understand what was the mood? I mean, what the feeling and all that during those days?
Yeah, I personally didn't participate, but friends and family and we're going to Phoenix Union was one of the biggest, it was one of the biggest schools in the country at that time, right? It was like a university campus. It's actually being used as a university campus today. But there was the social problems that Juan alluded to earlier, right? There was disparities, there was racial tensions, there was not the true commitment to invest in the future, right? Because education is about building the future for our community. And so what I was told is there was a one-day walkout, which the administrations and the powers that be kind of okay, didn't listen, right? And then they did one for a week, and sort of turned some heads, and then they did one for a month. And what they did is they set up their own high school down the street at the Immaculate Heart in the basement, and the church down the street, which ironically was built because Latinos couldn't go to the big St. Mary's Basilica. It's almost a replica of it, right?
Right.
So I believe, I keep getting different answers, but I believe Alfredo Gutierrez served as the superintendent at the time. He was a young man at the time, and Jody Lopez, I think, was the principal of the school. And after walking out for a month, and obviously it was a peaceful walkout, that's the learnings from Cesar Chavez, that it's about seats and students and seats is how they get paid, right, at the university through the equalization payments and stuff. So after that, they finally, they had I forget, it was like a 10-point thing that they wanted. I think they got everything other than having the current superintendent at the time resign, but they got everything else and were able to get some negotiations. But it's ironic that we've come full circle, right? We've come full circle. You got the big movements like Red for Ed and Invest in Ed, which we're supporting, because even more today, we have of the K through 12 students in our community, 44% are Latino. And if you go from 4th grade and below, it's majority Latino.
Wow.
So every year we're adding another grade where it's majority. So the lucha hasn't stopped.
Right.
The cause hasn't stopped.
Right.
So that's why we're heavily invested in education. From scholarships, we're actually working with the DACA students today, creating a separate scholarship program for them. We work in Head Start to work with our kids young. Another program called Parenting Arizona, which works with brain development, because it's become very scientific, very approaches to help make sure that indicators that our students are going to have success. And we need them. If our economy needs them, our country needs them.
Of course.
And as I mentioned earlier, in Mexico, our region needs them in order to compete in this global economy.
It's an economic issue in the end, correct? I mean, everything is money, it's economy.
Yeah, it doesn't take rocket science, right?
Right.
Who's going to pay the Social Security for the boomers right now? I'm a
Medi-
boomer. I want people to
Medicare.
pay for my Social Security, so
Of
we need to
course.
make sure we're investing.
Yeah. So going back, Juan, you had mentioned Valle del Sol. If you can continue with the history and maybe mention other organizations that were instrumental or operated in during the time that Chicanos was formed in 1969. I think that the GI Forum, the
LULAC.
SER, LULAC, I mean, Valle del Sol. So all these organizations are kind of operating in those years.
Well, let me just
Of course.
specifically say that GI Forum and LULAC was much older than Chicano Por La Causa because of the formation and because of their network that was established way back in the late 40s and 50s. And they have two charters here, and then
Right.
also they have, through that leadership, they had a Vesta Club who was also supportive of some of our, or at least goals. On the other hand, some of the folks were not necessarily agreed on our method of getting things done. And one of the things that we found out, for example, that United Way was tapping into a lot of the employees of the Hispanic community in different industries, but the Hispanic community was not getting any benefit in return. So we applied to see how we could get money funded. So the agreement was that would be start another organization that was by the sort. So yes, we're pushing for the funding. We recommended and talked to the leaders of that organization. Alfredo Gutierrez wrote the first proposal. It was funded, and then we got funded, and Manuel Dominguez became the executive director of Valle del Sol.
Got it.
Prior to that, we were dealing also with the Methodist Church at the national level. We got funded. And then also Southwest Council of La Raza then increased the funding. And so therefore it took off.
So this is at the very beginning of Chicanos Por La Causa.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we always had the affiliation with the farm workers.
Right.
That was
And
our base.
that's a question I wanted to ask you. Cesar Chavez, how much was Cesar Chavez linked part of the formation of Chicanos Por La Causa?
Very much so, because the organization that I mentioned earlier, all the volunteers were community organizers and leaders of the farm workers movement in the local market, such as the boycott, such as organizing the farm workers in El Mirage, Tolleson, and that part of the west area. Also, we were able to inform, if you please, the general community by having marches and walkouts and what have you of what was going on.
Right.
And consequently, we were able to successfully help the national farm workers complete their mission, and what that was to come forward and finally get recognition under contract of the farm workers, not only in California but also in Arizona.
Right. Amazing. Now I read a little bit about the history that the meetings, the first group that began to meet together to kind of discuss how this organization would be formed. Was there any issues in terms of, because you have this younger group that were going to the university, and then you have these folks who are linked to the rural efforts of Cesar Chavez with farm workers, so they kind of have to come and reconcile and perhaps kind of come up with a vision of what the mission would be, the purpose would be. How was that process?
Well, the process is very simple, that the majority of the young students were all from the rural areas who had fought their way through combating the urban area.
Of course.
And consequently, they were, in my opinion, they were the ones who were really leading the charge. And because they were willing not only to have intellectual input, but they were, workers that would go out and do what needed to be done. It was not, it was just going out and getting it done.
Right.
Organizing the community.
Right.
So therefore, they carried this Basta movement forward.
Ya basta.
Ya basta, vamos.
Of course.
So to me, that was the dynamics of it, the first board. And so consequently, because that was the ongoing thing of what all the forces throughout the United States were pushing. And obviously, we're in the 60s, and therefore everything at all the universities had other issues that were dealing with Vietnam and civil rights and everything else.
So there were several movements within the civil rights movement. You're talking about women's movement, the Chicano, and then even the African Americans. They were. It seems like that unleashed this movement unleashed several other groups to fight for their rights. And going back to Cesar Chavez, you got to meet Cesar Chavez, correct?
That is correct. I personally was in training because he would have training sessions on weekends, and I was there a number of times prior to the strike here in Arizona, and therefore we spent a lot of weekends there at Delano.
You got to sense his vision, his passion, and his message.
Very much so, and then I was assigned to work at the Modesto industry campaign for a month. So it was not only training, doing it, living it, and eating it, and part of that.
Are you ever set?
No, I'm not.
You never work in the fields?
Oh, no, I work in the field.
Okay.
And the answer to the question is, my dad was bracero, my father-in-law was bracero, and a number of generations were braceros that we work with.
Right.
And that's where people would say, no se puede, and Cesar said, sí se puede. That's where it came from.
Right. Amazing. So then this group gets together. How many were there? The original group that used to get together for some time.
I think I would maybe 10 or 12.
10.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually a decision was made to form this Chicanos por la Causa.
Yeah, it was formed based upon a number. But one of the reasons was that because the Southwest Council La Raza that were funded by the Ford Foundation moved to Phoenix.
Okay.
They chose to live in Phoenix.
Okay.
We didn't choose them, they chose to move.
Oh.
So consequently, because of the movement, we went and said, I understand that you were funded to help the Hispanic community. We're here, they're needing help.
Mhm.
And I yet to verify this, and I'm looking at the research. We were not in those plannings at the local level.
Wow.
Because San Antonio and Los Angeles, San Francisco, they had all the resources, they were putting everything together. But they, by some reason or other, they moved to Phoenix.
Mm.
So then, therefore, we sort of went.
Was the coming up with this name difficult? Was it a natural thing? Chicanos por la Causa. I mean, how did that name come about?
Well, the name came about simply because, again, the young persons, young men and women who were involved in the movement and who took, I would say, the method of, at one point in time in the African American movement, they were called Negroes,
Mm-hmm.
and then they became black.
Right.
So black meaning, taking a negative to a positive.
Right.
And then, there were Mexican Americans and there were Chicanos. So you did that, here, Chicano is perhaps a word that was not necessarily accepted by the general community. And they said, we are going to take Chicano Por La Causa name.
So Chicanos implies a Mexican American.
Exactly.
Two cultures, two languages, and the whole works.
And the battle to come.
Mhm.
And involved in the whole dynamic of change, social change.
Right. We're going to continue. Stay with us. We're going to go on a short break. We will be moving from the history to the services and what the Chicanos por la Causa is today. Stay with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. The subject today is Chicanos por la Causa, or Cplc, its history and services. Let's come back to David. And David, we need to talk about Santa Rita, right? And there's so much history there. Would you help us understand what this is, the background, and how it was instrumental for even Cesar Chavez in the Cesar Chavez movement? And I understand that there's some link still today with Chicanos por la Causa.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I'm very excited about is that a number of years ago, I think it was about 12 years ago, we were able to actually purchase the Santa Rita Center, which originally was part of the Sacred Heart Church, which still stands today by the airport.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunately, Chicanos por la Causa was able to work with the community and bring that land. It was called Golden Gate Community.
Mm-hmm.
So if you still go by the airport by 16th Street in Buckeye, you'll see the church still standing. And we're working with the diocese who's going to reopen it and fix it up and bring it back. So it's
Wow.
wonderful.
Amazing.
But one of their service centers that they had throughout the community was called Santa Rita Center. And it's in our backyard at Cplc headquarters across the street in Buckeye
Mhm.
on Tonto Street. And the significance of it is our connection to Cesar Chavez, right? What I believe is Cesar Chavez's second significant fast that he did. He actually did it at the Santa Rita Center.
Wow.
And we were blessed that we were able to buy it before it was knocked down or anything like that. And the protest was to, and Juan can probably elaborate more on this, back when Governor Williams was in charge, and the farm workers, there was the length of the handle for the holes that when they were doing the work in the fields, they only wanted to provide a half-length one, which was making it very hard on the backs of the farm workers that were doing the work. So he was protesting and saying that they had needed to change the law that the farm field owners had to provide a tool that was full length so that they wouldn't have to bend down as much and their backs wouldn't be hurt. So it's something that was, very detrimental to our community and the health of our community. So that was part of it. But the nice thing about that, we have pictures of other community meetings that we held there where folks like Martin Luther King's wife, Coretta King, was in the building. Bobby Kennedy was in the building.
I saw those videos. They're in YouTube. It's amazing.
And Juan can talk about back in those days too, where some of the stories I've been told that we were looked at like a communist group, right? You know, it was this crazy uprising group back in the '60s, right? So FBI and following some of the staff. So Juan, I think you told me those stories sometime. It'd be nice to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that just adding to the tools that were given to the farm workers, back in the days that it was said that the average age for a farm worker was like 42 years old because you wore out.
Right.
And it was very significant that the leadership within the community took on the governor and said, we need to change the laws. And basically, your back was really ruined forever. Getting back to what Dave was saying, it's very important that using today's terms, there was a platform,
Right.
Having a discussion on problems that existed and that we needed to resolve our own way,
Right.
our own self,
Right.
not depending on anybody else. So that's very important to me. That is ongoing with CPLC today. If you look at it and say, okay, what are we doing here? And we're not depending on other people, but helping ourselves, helping others.
Right.
And that's basically it.
I don't want to put you on the spot, and I hope I'm not overstepping, but do people know that you're working on a book?
No, not right now. It's where me and David have been in discussion of that.
Got it. Oh, I hope a book is written soon on this.
So we're
on the history.
And our deadline's going to be December at the end of the year. So we're now the narrative's 10 chapters long. So.
Wow.
But we have been working with PBS and having the production of a video, an hour-long video that will be broken down into 15-minute segments.
That's great.
So we can provide it to the schools so they can learn about. We did have a book that you mentioned, Frank Barrios wrote for us
Right.
about 12 years ago. But really felt that we needed to do a video where we can interview people like Juan and others. Unfortunately, we were able to interview people like Pete Garcia and Terry Crews before they left this world.
Good.
And so I'll give a little sneak. We're celebrating 50 years in April. So we're having
50?
50 years.
Wow.
1969 we incorporated. So April we're going to have our big celebration, and that's when we'll release this documentary.
That is amazing. Let's move now, and hopefully, Victor, you can join this piece of the conversation to what CPLC is today. I've been in Phoenix for 15 years, and I have seen almost like a non-stop, if you will, drumbeat of CPLC growth programs. I mean, what is going on with CPLC? What services do you offer? How are you have evolved and continue to evolve in the services that you provide?
Well, I can really speak to what we're doing, and David can talk about the rest of the program. But I lead up the workforce department. So essentially, our job is to connect people to employment. And when we talk about that, and the way we approach employment at CPLC is that we're not really looking for that job anymore. We want to connect people to careers, something that they can stick with, something that they can take home a livable wage. They have a career path, that they're not going to be stuck in a dead-end job, so to speak.
Right.
And something that they can support their families, pay their bills, send their kids to college. So that's what we're really committed to, and it goes back to that concept of self-determination, of not relying on people to give us something, a handout, or we are going to take it ourselves. We can figure these things out ourselves. We can go into the community and bring these jobs ourselves, and give people freedom and the liberty that economic prosperity really affords all of us.
Of course. So how does that look? That this program, I got to speak to some gentleman that works for CPLC at the LULAC convention, and he was talking to me about programs that you have in Maryvale.
Yeah, it was our program's only about 2.5 years old.
Okay.
It was workforce has always been part of CPLC. I think that's something. Jobs has always been a key issue for our community. Right. But it kind of went dormant, and then David, under David's new leadership, when he came on board, they brought it back. And I've been fortunate enough to be there since they started bringing workforce back at CPLC. And we've gone from a staff of 2 people to I think we're at 17 now.
Wow.
And we have a great presence here in the city of Phoenix. We're going to be expanding into Tucson to provide services in Tucson. Also in Las Vegas, we'll be doing workforce services out there in Las Vegas. And I think what makes us different is that we really want to connect people to employment fast. We want to get people jobs right away. We don't want people to come to our job fair and be told go home and apply online. We want people to apply there. We want people to talk to recruiters because we know people need to get a job and go online.
Do you offer trainings or you connect the folks to the companies that offer the training?
We have a few trainings. One of them is focused on bilingual banking, which is made possible through Unidos US with the support of Bank of America, which we're very grateful for. It's called Bilingual Banker Training, so that we can help people really polish their Spanish and so that they can serve our community in both languages.
Of course.
That's something that I think we all deserve, right? We have additional trainings in retail. We're going to be doing one in customer service. But then we also have very strong partnerships with the community colleges all across the town, where we really feel we shouldn't have to reinvent anything. If something's quality is there, we want to go in and support that and see how we can connect people to those existing opportunities. Of course, from our perspective, if they go to school or something like that, we really want to support them and do the wraparound services and all the different things that CPLC can bring to the table.
And I have a question because I work for AARP and it seems like the bigger you get, sometimes the more difficult it is for people to find you. Do you have like a number that people can call in to get whatever services they want, the website? What is the best way to find you?
Yeah, so they can call the main number. They'll be connected to our workforce department.
So the main line would be at the Buckeye office?
The Buckeye office.
And they can find you on the website?
Yeah, they just call and 602-257-0700, and if they need workforce, they can just ask for workforce or whatever other program.
They'll direct them to whatever.
Absolutely, yes.
And we still have 4 minutes, David, before we for this segment.
Sure.
Can you tell us the array or the main areas of service that Chicanos Por La Causa offers?
Sure. So let me start it up with, our vision is a simple vision now. It's empowered lives, 2 words, empowered lives. And our mission is to drive economic and political empowerment, right? I've been kind of alluding to that all this discussion. But we do it in 4 focus areas: economic development, housing, real estate, so we help people with housing, education, social services, which includes the workforce development, and healthcare. Underneath those 4, we call them our pillars of service.
Right.
We have 34 programs.
Hmm.
We have 900 staff throughout our system. We're
900
staff.
That is awesome.
And growing. And the way we're growing in these other states I mentioned earlier is we've actually been acquiring other groups that have asked us to come into their markets. That's, we're, like I said, we're looking at Texas, California, Utah, and Colorado as we speak. And all of it's around self-sufficiency. Victor talked about that. We're very big on that. We're very clear to tell people we're not welfare.
Right.
We have
So we're going to help you to basically be on your own and be self-sufficient.
Self-sufficiency, self-determination, and using Juan's words earlier, right? Nobody's going to solve your problems. You got to be part of solving your own problems.
Got it.
And so we model that ourselves as an organization, right? We're the largest community development corporation in Arizona, the 3rd largest Latino community development corporation in the country. And my goal is to be the biggest, but also be the most impactful. We served last year, the official number was 304,000 people. Wow. 304,000 people, of which 40% were non-Latinos. So we're actually growing and evolving. We started as a Mexican-American group. We've had to evolve over time, working with the immigrant community, and now we're changing the narrative that we serve everybody. And more people are reaching out to us from both sides of political parties, government, expanding internationally now. I had the consul of Guatemala reach out to me and said, "Hey, I see what you're doing in Mexico. Can you help us too?" So we're doing some good stuff, and again, it kind of falls around what your show's about, right? Educate, celebrate. We celebrate our successes, but connect, right? And that's what we want to do here. We want people to connect to our programs because the board has put a big challenge on me. They're saying, "Okay, dude, it's nice to say 3 and 4. now that by the end of the next 5 years, we want that number to be 1.5 million people. I take a deep breath and I said, okay, vámonos, and the lucha continues.
Of course. Now, in the area of health, what is CPLC doing in the area of health and human services?
Well, we're
Briefly.
Yes, we're doing full services. We're partnering with Native Health here to open up a new clinic in Maryville for primary care. We do behavioral health services. We serve the seriously mental ill community as well, on a culturally based for our community, but others as well. We also have a program for HIV/AIDS to help people who are unfortunately suffering from that. We have a domestic violence shelter for women. We have a program that works with infants to make sure they're getting the proper nutrition and brain development, and the parents understand how it is to educate and prepare their children to be successful in the future. So in the healthcare education, we have Head Start, we have charter high schools, we have scholarship programs through all 3 universities here in Arizona, also the community colleges, both Maricopa and Pima Community College down in southern Arizona. We have programs for small businesses, you want to start a business. So everybody doesn't come in with a problem with this. Sometimes they want to go to school, so they're a great part, or they want to start their own business because they have a great skill. And we have great stories around all those types of programs. Again, we have 34 different programs.
34. We're going to have to go on our last break, and we will continue addressing the 4 pillars of services that CPLC offers. Stay with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We'll be right back.
Welcome to AARP, Arizona Hispanic Connection. Educate. Celebrate. Connect. Arizona Hispanic Connection.
Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. This is AARP Arizona Hispanic Connection. We are already on our 2nd year, and as David Adame said earlier, our goals are to educate, to celebrate Latino accomplishments, and to connect the community of all generations. We are talking about CPLC, amazing, should I call you organization, agency?
Community Development Corporation.
Corporations, that's even better, Community Development Corporation. David, let's move on and continue to talk about these 4 pillars of your services. You address health and human services and housing. So in relationship to housing, what is specifically the areas that you address?
So we address the continuum of housing needs for our community. Some people may be in a position where they just want to rent an apartment, for example. So we own a portfolio of 4,000 units today throughout the state, Nevada and New Mexico, and planning to expand that to about 10,000 units in the next 5 to 7 years.
Now, did you say own?
We own and operate.
Wow.
4,000 units today. And it means multiple things, right? Because what we do when we earn the revenue from renting the apartment, we then take that revenue on our self-sufficiency model and we invest in our community.
Of course.
So I talked about the word corporation. So I don't have normal stockholders like a corporation on the New York Stock Exchange.
Right.
My stockholders are the community,
Right.
the stakeholders, and we're going to reinvest the money.
So you have to generate your own money and then invest it back in the
Right.
community.
Today we generate through our for-profit business subsidiaries that we own 55% of our budget. And we have a goal to increase that to 70%. So that's self-determination, that if our community needs something, we're not handcuffed to say,
Of course.
well, you can't help somebody undocumented, you can't help somebody, whatever.
Right.
So we continue to do that in housing. We also have programs for people who are in a position where they want to own their home, a part of the American dream, as they
Of course,
say.
of course.
Right, so we have programs and counseling that helps them prepare for that so they can sustain that housing. And then
Just
we
on
have-
the counseling area, but not related to loans or on the individual?
No, we help them get loans.
Oh, you help
So we
them.
don't have a mortgage company directly, but we work with many of the banks and the mortgage companies and understand what the underwriting processes are. So if we review them first, so they don't go there and they say no to them. We say, okay, let's look at your credit, let's look at your income, a full plan, financial plan to say, okay, now you're ready.
Got it.
And we know that we have banks that will be, a mortgage company that will finance that purchase. for
Right. In education, you mentioned that you have your scholarship programs?
Yes, we have we're very blessed to have a great partnership with Arizona State University, whatever kind of degree you want. So we raise dollars, we have golf tournaments and other events that we do to raise money, and 100% of that money goes towards scholarships. the great partnership we have with ASU is they match our dollars about 3.5 to 1. So if I raise $1, then I have an extra $4.50
Wow.
to make scholarships, and we're actually working on a big plan with them to even grow that. We have a great partnership with, it's more new, with University of Arizona down in Tucson, and we're talking to Northern Arizona University as well. So we want to make sure that there's no barrier
Of course.
for our community to have an education.
So if somebody needs to apply for a scholarship, can they go online to your website, or they have to contact your office?
They can go online, and I talked about the 4 pillars. You can navigate through that.
Okay.
But if all else fails, if you don't have access to internet or something, you can call the number at 602-257-0700, and you'll get properly connected with the right staff.
Yeah. Now, what is the Esperanza Awards? You do have a program on?
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Esperanza is a program that Pete Garcia started. He was studied education, so his heart was really with education. So we felt that there was not an award ceremony that really recognized our Latino teachers out there. And so we started Esperanza Awards, which is a program where we honor 5 to 6 teachers every year.
Right.
Their superintendents or somebody from their school district has to recommend them. We have a panel that reviews all the applications. And we have a big celebration. Last year we did it at Grand Canyon University, and we made it very fun. It was like they're introducing a player
Right.
with the
I was
spotlight
there,
and the noise, and they had
It
the
was
school
fun.
band cheering them on, because
Yes.
they do yeoman's work, right?
Of course.
And of course, everybody knows they don't make the money that they deserve to be making. So that's why the whole Red for Ed and everything going on right now, which we support. But we provide each teacher with a $5,000 cash award where they can go take a vacation or do something.
course.
Most of them end up spending it right back in the kids,
Mm.
but it's up to them.
Of course.
And then they get another $2,500 for the school, for school supplies and
Yeah.
other stuff like that. And then, they get all kinds of other goodies that some of our other partners, like Staples provides them a computer, different partners. And that's what I want to make sure that's clear. We don't do anything without partnership. And I'd like Victor to talk about what we're doing with Walmart. Now, Walmart has been recently just renewed a great grant for us and how we're doing it and the impact that that's making.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. One of you mentioned Maryville. We're really committed to serving the community of Maryville. About 400,000 people, not a lot of services. We're really reaching a lot of members of our community. And Walmart really stepped up to the plate about a year and a half ago and funded the initial round. And from that seed, we've been able to grow that to about $1.5 million in additional funding. Another round from Walmart and other partners. Like David said, we really can't do anything in silos. We don't do anything alone. I think one of the great things about Cplc is, it's so well respected in the community that when you call, people answer. And they say, hey, do you want to do this together? The answer is always yes.
Right.
How can we do it tomorrow?
Right. So that funding from Walmart is used for those programs that you run there?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be, in fact, I'll announce it here, but we'll be opening up a location inside Desert Sky Mall to bring all the things that we do to a place where there's tons of people.
That is
where
amazing.
we can have AARP come out and do events. I mean, it's going to be really, really fantastic. And again, this is about just continuing to roll out our services, reaching for that million people served. David says go, we go. and hey, La Lucha sigue.
Of course.
Fighting.
I want to mention that David Adame, you are still a board member for the AARP Foundation, correct?
For the National Foundation.
For the National Foundation.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
Absolutely.
And I want to just congratulate you because again, 15 years in Arizona, but that drumbeat keeps just being heard. I hear it all the time. Really congratulations. You've done an amazing job, and I know you will continue to improve and enhance all the services that you offer. Juan Alvarez, how should we end the program?
I think we should end the program by simply being very real. And the reality is that because of I call it the 24-hour news cycle, and those who are competing to get the best story out, puts us in a bad light, us Hispanics, because
Right.
they paint us all with one brush.
Right.
And I think it's up to us to promote our own image and our own positive steps and our own contributions, very positive to the community.
Right.
We have many people who have done many good deeds to be part of the Phoenix area, such as getting a governor elected back then.
And I was going to ask you very briefly, how was the Chicanos Por La Causa somewhat involved with the election of Raúl Castro as governor in the 70s?
Shall we say that we were just since we were a nonprofit and could not compete in the
Okay.
political scene, we
Got it.
had a lot of volunteers.
I understand. As AARP staff, I understand what that means 100%. But I assume that was a lot of momentum for this election?
Oh, yes, because of the fact that election was based upon the recall of Governor Jack Williams.
Hmm.
And that one took off, and obviously Raul Castro was elected. As an example. On the other hand, Chicano Por La Causa survived all these political, at one time we were threatened to cancel out our status because of, they could.
Overstepping?
Not overstepping, they could control Chicano Por La Causa.
Oh.
But they say you have a nonprofit status in IRS, and therefore you cannot do what you're doing. I said, we're not doing anything, we're just getting volunteers involved.
Right.
You know,
So it's always tricky.
yeah, it's very tricky. But then coming back to reality, you know, we're dealing now with fake news and all that new concept coming up, and they're painting us with.
So if I hear you correctly, there is an image being painted that is not the real one. So what could we do to paint a more real image of who we are?
We need to produce our own production,
Got it.
such as this.
Okay.
We need to go out and say, this is what we're doing. This is what other people are doing who are helping us out. These are our partners. And therefore, we need to promote our own. Now, one of the things that I need to say is the internet, with God blessing, we're now we're now in the same level field,
Right.
and we can compete. You know, I've seen the organization Chicano Por La Causa take on big institutions that we gave people run for their money.
I understand that Chicanos Por La Causa has a ton of followers. I don't remember the number, do you? I think
31,000.
31,000 followers. Amazing. Final thoughts, David, and then we'll come to you, Victor, for final thoughts. We have a couple minutes.
Yeah, so we're very committed to that, and that's why you can see, you know, Juan's a very strategic thinker, very, right, first CEO of the organization, so that's why I've reached back and to get that history and those concepts, and what do we not. No, they were successful, helping get a Latino governor in place,
Of
right?
course.
Shoot, I'd be proud if we can get that done now, right?
Of course.
We're gonna try to get a mayor here pretty
Right,
soon, so.
right.
But we do need to tell our own story. We do need to change the narrative, and we have partners like Pop Communication that helped us produce some commercials that we talk about. Chicanos Por La Causa, right, that we invested $12 million at the downtown Kimpton Hotel, which gave this young lady a job, right, who then bought a house in this neighborhood. So we actually did a study, a third-party study, we commissioned it, that showed what has been Chicanos Por La Causa's economic impact, not the social impact, but the economic impact of the state. It's close to $2 billion in the last year.
Wow.
With a beat.
In the last what?
10 years,
10 years.
total,
Right.
almost $2 billion.
Amazing.
So when we go talk to, the elected officials and other influential folks, we tell them this, right? This was a third-party study, right? We didn't make it up. It's all backed with the facts. But the other thing that, Juan talked about was re-engaging, right? So that's another commitment I want to make, was to re-engage in the political process, right? So there's tools now that you can have. We're a IRS 501c3, which we can do advocacy and those types of things.
Right.
But now we have a 501c4, which allows us to engage, and then there's independent expenditures. And other, so we're learning those type of new tools, right, and bring them to the table. And our board, took a while to decide to do this, because when you take positions, you can get attacked too. But we're not afraid of that, because it's important for our community that we're out front.
So those provisions by law now will give you a little bit more liberty or space to be more vocal, more and advocate more.
Yeah, it'll protect us against people just coming after us because they don't want to get us involved. And they
Right.
don't want. They know the numbers, right? The demographics of the Latino community. It's here. We just need to invoke that power.
Right. Victor, last word, we'll give it to you.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky. Thank you for having us, all of us. But I would say join us. Join cplc.org. Join us, literally work with us. There's careers page. We're hiring something like 90 people across the state. Volunteer with us. You can volunteer on there, or support us monetarily. You can make a donation for that. Join La Causa. It's
Right.
your cause too.
I want to congratulate each one of you and thank you for making time on a Saturday morning to come and join the show. It's been great. I hope you enjoyed it. This is the end of our show for today. Cplc, it's History and Services. Have yourself a good weekend. We'll be back next week.